Hello, listeners. Welcome to Pages of Wisdom with Kate and Whit. We are two friends chatting about the magic, the spirituality, the wonder that is literature and books, and how we can bring this magic into our everyday lives. Happy listening. As a quick note, this episode of Pages of Wisdom contains spoilers for Sold for Endless Rue by Madeline Robbins, A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross, and From Blood and Ash by Jennifer Armentrout. Hello, listeners. Welcome to Pages of Wisdom with Kate and Whit. I am Whit. Kate, how are you doing today, ma'am?
Well, I am Kate, and I am doing quite well, and so happy to chat with you again, Whitney, about some of our favorite discussion conversation topics.
Where did we end off last time talking about? I think I was talking about a couple of books that I had been reading, and just to kind of segue us into more talk about library angels today.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
So that's where we were. You were recapping your laundry list of current reads, which at this point in time is no longer current reads. So we'll catch up on that. Um, but it kind of also touching on the ways that library angels were showing up for you, some of those signs and synchronicities, which I expect that we will hit on later in today's episode.
Yes, because I think that's going to be our next episode is talking about signs and synchronicities, right? Yes.
Yes, that feels right. That feels like the right direction that we should be going after this. So, um, I would love to know though, because you are such an avid reader, um, can you share with me, like, what are you reading?
Well, right now I'm kind of going a little cray because
Oh gosh.
because okay, so this is how it happens with me. As soon as I'll put a bunch of books on hold in audio form in, just like physical form at the library, what have you, or on Libby, which is how I do my audiobooks, and then they will all just come to me at the same time. So right now, what I'm reading is I'm reading a book called The Serpent in the Wings of Night, which is not my usual go-to. It is vampires. And it's like about this girl who is like raised by a vampire king. It's pretty crazy. And then I also am reading one that is like a cozy, gosh, now I don't even know what the name of it is. I don't have it in front of me because I'm just listening to it. But it's like a cozy, like, oh, I live in a small town and like I'm gonna like fall in love with this guy who I normally wouldn't talk to, and then we're all gonna like love the small town, like that kind of a thing. Which is not, it's also not normally what I like to read. But yeah, don't make that
No, well, I'm thinking, I think we could all use a little more cozy. You know what like, that makes sense. That
yeah.
makes sense.
The weird thing about these ones is I've read a couple other ones by this author. The weird thing about them is that it's like it's real cozy, and then all of a sudden it's like super spicy, and then it's like, oh,
Ooh.
cozy, cozy again. So
Ooh.
I like it.
It gets a little R and then we go back to PG and then we
Like,
go a little X and then we go back to PG.
it's just a little bit, and you're like, okay, and then you're like, okay, well, this seems kind of realistic. This is people living their lives. The
That's
other thing
true.
The other thing I'm listening to is one that's called From Blood and Ash, which is this is the one that I was saying has Trout at the end of her name. Jennifer L. Armentrout, I believe is how you pronounce it. And the other author for The Serpent in the Wings of Night, her name is Carissa Broadbent. But the Blood and Ash one is kind of like monsters, and I'm having to really regulate on myself because the two are a little bit similar. There's vampires in the other one too. So I have to kind of like regulate on it. But yeah, that's what I'm reading right now. What are you reading?
I like how you just throw the cozy in between those two little bookends. Let's put a little cozy in between these intense supernatural stories.
Yeah.
So I am still in a lot of journaling mode, so I'm doing a lot of writing. But a book that I picked up that I was very late to initially read, I would say kind of in my spiritual journey was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which is it was kind of like a early precursor to books like The Secret and to any of the teachers that work with law of attraction and some of the universal laws around creating reality and working with that. I read it initially. I said I was late in my journey, which it was probably about 15 or 20 years into reading more of like that self-help and then spiritual, metaphysical materials. I picked it up. I was very reticent to read it. I picked it up when we went to Greece, and I remember like reading it like one of my first mornings in Santorini, overlooking the where it was said to be that Atlantis potentially was. So it's a,
Hmm.
cul what is it? A culver, what is it? Kate. It's an old volcano, like right off of Santorini. It's an incredible like scape. And I remember being like, how am I just reading this book for the first time? And it annoys the hell out of people because it's very much like, I'm not going to tell you directly how this works, but as long as you're reading it, you should be able to like pick up the breadcrumbs. It's a very quest-like book.
Oh, it's my forte, those quests.
Yeah. And it pisses people off. People are like, that's the dumbest book. That's just, some people love it and some people not so much. But
I feel
I've
like
got that one and I'm just doing like those general like pull to certain pages and then chew on just certain paragraphs, which is very common for me.
mm-hmm. I have a couple of books that I have like an ongoing thing with that I'm reading that are not my normal thing to read. And so I'm doing the same thing with them where I kind of just am reading a little bit of it. There's this book that's called Rebecca, actually, that I have been like slowly reading it for like, gosh, more than like 6 months, but I'll just read a little bit like here and there. And it's like a historical, like gothic fiction. It's good.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
Yeah. Um,
Well,
yes, go ahead, ma'am.
jinx you on that. Sorry about that. I was gonna ask that we kind of recap. I know that we always want to touch on our personal definitions of certain things and what we discuss. And I think it might be helpful to kind of recap on how we define the Rebeccas and library angels um, uniquely and individually to us. So do you want to share a little bit about how you view library angels and the Rebeccas?
Yeah, so to me, how I view them is I view them as a group of entities that help me to find things. For me, it's mostly just through literature, through written word. It doesn't really apply to me when I'm like writing, because I don't really write anything myself. It does come through a lot in like, or they do come through a lot in just like my conversations with people and like spoken word. Um, but yeah, I imagine in my mind that they are a group of individuals that consists of many that I know and many that I don't know. I feel like that some of my favorite authors, like Octavia Butler or Zora Neale Hurston, are in that group. Um, and yeah, I usually will just ask them just to lead me on my highest path and to help me find things through them. And that's usually how I pick what I'm going to read, or really how I make a lot of just like life decisions. I think, depending on like what it is that I'm trying, like if I have a specific thing that I'm like, okay, like how do I solve this problem? Then I will ask them to help me find it through the people that I speak to or through the things that I'm reading. And I know you love it so much, but a lot of times it's when things just fall off the shelf or things that I've been meaning to read for a long time. And then I'll finally be like, okay, it's time to read this, even though I've been looking at it for like months and months and months. It's
Mm.
it seemed to pick the right time, even if it's something that I'm familiar with and I like have it on my like TBR list. They pick the right time to have me read certain things, which is nice.
I love that. And that's like a really good point right there is sometimes like the information comes into your orbit, but you're not ready to imbibe in the information yet. It's almost like it's just kind of getting ready for you and you're getting ready for it.
My favorite one is whenever remember when I started reading that I started reading this book called One Dark Window, and I was just reading it. Somebody let me borrow their Kindle, and they were like, if you want to buy a Kindle, like here, like try to read on it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try to read that. So I started reading it. The main character's name is Elspeth. And then the next book that I read, because I just read like the first chapter, whatever. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to read this other book because it was by an author named Rebecca Ross. And I was like, perfect, a Rebecca, it's going to be great. And I read the whole thing. And then at the end, they just randomly were like, and what about Elspeth? And yeah, I was like, wait, who is Elspeth like in this? So, yes. So you do read things at the right time that you're supposed to. And that's how it comes across for me.
Mm.
That's nice. I love it.
Very nice. Very nice. I love your relationship with this group, with
Mhm.
this energy. I love it. I love it so much.
What is your definition, ma'am?
So, like many things with me, it's very broad and maybe a little obscure, but for me, it is library angels are a component of the Akashic records of everything that has ever been spoken or thought or written. It's very much, they are very much tied to communication and wisdom of and with the world of form. So when we speak anything, when we write anything, and when we think anything, it takes form, both subtle and then not so subtle, right? If like we're writing down. So library angels are bringers of wisdom and information, and they are the muses, and um they are the deliverers of responses of information, if that makes sense. So like you mentioned, asking for information via written word, like a book that can come into our experience, is working with the library angels. But also, I think that it's, asking and somebody being able to deliver the response in conversation is also for me working with these angels, with these beings. And I don't necessarily have to say that they're angelic. It's a very pure force that the universe, that God has ensured is available to all of us. And whether or not we work with them cognizantly and consciously or not, they're there. Um, so that's kind of how I see them, and um how I've come to understand them. And again, I'm never going to fully understand them. I'm working the best that I can, and I'm learning new things all the time
I
about them.
feel I feel like we have to base it just like on our own experience. Because I remember when we were first talking about this, and I was like telling you what was going on, and you're like, well, there's something that's called library angels. And I remember I was like, well, what would be, my mind, like what I need to find a book on this. Like how can I find a book on library angels? And like there like is not, I mean, I couldn't find really anything that was about library angels when I tried to look it up. So, I mean, I found like some random like websites and stuff, and I didn't find like any kind of literature about it, which is,
That's an interesting point.
yeah.
That's a very interesting point. I think the library angels were like present when we were first working on, they're very involved with symbolism,
Hmm.
and so I think they were very present and very inspiring when we first started, scribing on cave walls, when we first started, writing into objects that we were learning how to form and create. I just think that they're very inspiring, very clarifying, very wise, and very information filled energy that has been guiding us. I mean, for as long as we've been around to think and create and ask for more information. I think that they've been very involved with our evolution and the way that we have kind of refined ourselves. And they are really, really committed to providing clarity, because I think when we're clear on things and when we know that information is soon or will arrive, I think we act and we choose and we decide very differently than if we feel like the answers are not coming.
Hmm.
So I think it's an extremely benevolent, it's an extremely supportive group of energies, group of angels, groups of beings. And I do think that they, just as you mentioned, I think it's completely comprised of folks. And when I say folks, beings, entities that have been in earthly body and have earthly experience, and those who have never incarnated into this world. It's just such a rich, robust group. Um, and who we work with and how they respond to us, I think, is very unique to us.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you think that like each person has like their own like separate group of them, or do you think it's just like that energy and that's how we personally, like I personally view them as certain people amongst, other entities that I do that I don't know, what have you. But do you think that each person gets like an individualized, you know what I mean, group of
Yeah.
them, or do you think that it's like just a collective in general and that just is how we relate to it?
I think there are those like really archaic, foundational, and these are the aspects that have not incarnated before that are truly like the framework. Um, I think those exist for all of us, but I do think we have, just like with our guides, our support, our unseen support systems are very tailored to what complements our mindset, what complements the way we receive information. And that is so unique to each of us. Which I think is also why when we run into someone who has a deep love and respect for similar authors or similar, or just maybe a book itself or the information, I think that's why we kind of bloom and really like connect in a special way,
Mhm.
because many of us are not relying on and being supported by those similar authors in the beyond, the similar, um, yeah, whether I guess that whether they're alive or not doesn't really matter,
Mhm.
as far as the authorship goes. I mean, we can be very supported by authors who are still in body and still very much alive. And I think that is still tied to and connected to library angels. I think authors that come into our lives, books that come into our lives that can potentially change us or broaden our perspective or bring in new ideas, it's very much the work of the divine, very much the work of unseen forces still.
So you kind of went out, can you go over a little bit about how you kind of touched on this a little bit, but how you interact with the Rebeccas, with the library angels, like you personally, like through like your writing. Because I feel like that's
Yeah.
happening a lot with you lately. And so I have no concept of that because I literally just can't write even like a, paper or anything. Not that I'm
I would
writing papers, but
I like wouldn't agree with you on that. I'd also am honoring the way that you experience things, but when I look at you, I definitely and see like how you write, I find you to be very inspired. You are a lot less superfluous with your words than I am, which I aspire to be clear and more concise like you are. So I think that's fascinating that you the way you perceive it.
my God.
Um, but and yeah, so I do pay attention to what comes up in conversations. I think how we get inspired, especially when you're having a conversation and you do this random like off the cuff, I don't know where that just came from or why I just said that. I think that is very much being touched by inspiration. And when we are inspired and led to kind of include certain comments or ideas that feel like they come out of left field, those are very much for me working with the library angels, working with those really powerful, benevolent beings that work with words, that work with written word, that work with our spoken stories and the way that we hand stories down over generations and generations. That is all very much like dancing with the library angels. And so it's not uncommon for me to ask a question and then get real quiet and then allow my hand to scribe to and it's very much a mental faculty hitting the paper, hitting the world of form, mental being subtle energies, mental being where we receive those inspirations, where we receive those intuitive hits and allowing it to pour forth into the world of form. And I can speak it as well. So, I mean, I could just ask a question and speak out loud, like what feels like ideas or responses to it. And it's very, very natural. It was not so much whenever I think I first started working with this, but when we kind of look in hindsight, I feel like this happens very naturally to the point where it's innate and you don't even think about it happening. I'm going to make a list of what I'm going to do today and I'm kind of just going to let it flow. Is that not kind of inspired?
Hmm. I feel like it's interesting to me because the way that you had sent me a message the other day that was giving advice about something that's going on in my life. And I let John, my husband, listen to it. And his reaction to how you just speak about things, like he's like, oh, you can tell that she is just, it's not necessarily that like you're like channeling, but it's just the way you speak is how you just were describing it. It's like you get in like a zone just when you're talking normally, I feel like. Does that make sense? Kind of?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And you caught that about like when we first started like speaking and like developing well and developing like our relationship which evolved into friendship.
Hmm.
You caught that about me. You'd be like you start to slow down and sometimes I speed up. It depends upon what is pouring in and what I'm connecting to when folks are channeling. So I think that that's a very good point. You can give yourself over and open yourself up to the unseen in a way where it is very channeled. Like, and for me, I personally, if I am really deep in that, I close my eyes. My tempo typically becomes very not my own because again, I'm opening it up to something else. And I worked really focusedly on integrating my personality in with what I channel. So it would feel more natural. It does feel more natural. I don't love closing my eyes, getting deeply disconnected, and not allowing my humanness, my personality to be present for the information. I love learning alongside the person that I'm speaking to. Like I learn from every single thing that pours through. I like being present for that. I don't like being like pushed to the background like some folks do when they channel. I like being here for it. I like learning and hearing it.
That's what John was like. It's just integrated into how she just views the world. He's like, that's just how she communicates and how she views the world. Because it's not like you're like, I mean, whenever you were giving us advice the other day, I didn't notice like, oh, her voice is slowing down or anything like that. I just thought you were just speaking to me as my friend and just talking. But he had a different perspective when not a different perspective, but he just heard that happening as you were talking and something that I guess that I just am used to. When
You
you
are, yes, you're exactly right. And you noticed it beforehand, but I think when people are around me, it feels more natural and you stop paying attention to that. Yeah. So
Interesting, man. That's very interesting.
I think innately we can say, hey, library angels, hey, Rebecca's, and ask for a response for information that will serve us, that will assist us to come through. And I think depending upon where we are in our life, how clear we are on what we want to receive and kind of how we work with things. If you and I are going to receive, we've been on our journeys for a little bit now. So we're going to receive information in a different way than if we were just starting. And I
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's the difference between you can pick up a book. I'm trying to think of like a book like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and there be some really, really special symbolism in there that hits really hard and that could speak to you in ways that is really meaningful. And that's a book that you can go real surface level with or you can go real deep with.
Yeah.
Versus, hey, actually, I want the responses in very spiritual work. I want them in deep, like Madame Blavatsky is one way that is a very deep work. She has a trilogy of books that work with universal concepts and the history of creation and all of this that would not speak to a lot of folks who are just starting their journey unless they were about to go real hard and heavy just out the gate.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? So I feel like depending upon like where we are, you got to be easy and breezy about how you receive the information,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have to get real serious with it. You can have great fun and ease with what you're receiving back as far as responses go. Like they don't yeah, they don't have to be real complicated. They don't have to be like deeply like metaphysical or symbolic to where you have to chew on them for 5 years in order to squeeze any wisdom out of it.
I think you can't be super serious about it sometimes because then you're just kind of blocking that like energy, you know. I don't know if I feel like that if I am trying too hard to find the answer to something, then I don't receive it really, or I just don't pick up on certain things because I'm just like for lack of a better word, I feel like I'm just blocking it. One of the things that we've talked about before also is that a lot of times I get information through like I mean, I guess this would just be kind of like related to having random conversations with people, but um and we've talked about this before, how you will read something and then you relay it to me. Like I will have something that I'm wondering about, and then you will find something in a book and like relay it back to me, which I feel is cool too. Just in our conversations, you'll be like, well, you know what? I just read this. And I'm like, actually, that's perfect. And then a lot of the times it also bounces back to you, and you're like, well, I actually needed this information as well. So I find that to be fascinating. Do you feel like this works through music as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Anytime there's poetry, prose, I love, so that's like thinking about like modern day music and classic music and everything. I think anytime that you are being inspired to create in this world, anytime you're using words or meaning or symbolism in as abstract of ways that you could potentially craft with it, you are working with these beings.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime that you are, and I think we in this space, we do try to keep it a little bit structured within the world of literature, written word, but it's a very fluid space. So when you're working with poetry, I mean, I keep thinking of Kendrick Lamar. I keep thinking of some of these folks who are channeling, which that's what it is, incredible like wisdom as well as crafting the most fantastic delivery of words that are descriptive of one's experience and the internal experience that we have. The more like nail on the head you are with that, the closer in communion you are with library angels.
Hmm. And then the more authentic you are when you're relaying it like to other people and talking about it.
And oftentimes you're like, I have no idea if this is going to land with anyone. Like, this is so honestly and authentically me, and I have no idea how it's going to land or if anyone's going to understand it. I think that is when you know you were on a really good track.
Which now I feel like I'm at that point where I'm just like, oh yeah. I was like all the time at work, I'll just talk about library angels and oh, this book just fell off the shelf and oh, and everybody now is used to it and they're like, oh well, did you read it? I mean, you don't have to read everything that falls off this. I'm like, what? Yeah, and I've gotten better. I've gotten better about forcing myself to like do stuff because that's the other thing too. It has to feel good. Like you can't. It goes along with like blocking things out. You can't force. You can't force stuff. You got to let it flow. I feel like.
Well, and you really said something important in the sense that, when we do get very structured on our expectations or when we're really like stringent about how we're going to receive the information or where we are looking for the information, it is both helpful, but and also we have to say, okay, I'm open to receiving it here, but there may be areas or places and spaces that I'm not even thinking about. And that's okay for the information to get delivered there too. Like we do have to be loose. We do have to be, dare I say, playful.
Hmm.
There, library angels are very playful. They are very flexible. And if we want to access really important information that guides us, I think we have to be gentler and gentler and gentler on our expectations. And I feel like the more gentle and the more playful and the more open and flexible we are, that's when the really crazy fun stuff starts to happen.
What do you feel like is the best way for people to approach it if they wanted to start working with library angels, like just in their everyday life? Like, how do you feel like my personal way of doing it is that, and I think I already said this at the beginning, but one of the things I love to do since I work at a library is when I go to work every day, as soon as I'm walking in, if I have something specific or if I just, just want to receive things from them, I will just ask for them to help guide me just like on my highest path through whatever I can find. I'm in a building full of books, so whatever I can find that's on my highest path, you know, bring it on. Like, I would love to see it. And I think it's interesting too, the way that you said that, you have to be open to these silly ways and these different ways of receiving the information, because it just makes me think of whenever I got the weird notification on my phone that was in Portuguese that was from you. Like, that's what it makes me think of. It's like it's ways that you don't even expect things to come through, and you have to be um expecting, or you have to be appreciative of those things. I don't know. It's just it's awesome.
And will you share like that story? Because it is a pretty fun one.
So my family has been looking into going overseas, going to Europe, and we had been looking at a lot of stuff about Portugal. And fast forward to me doing a ton of research and stuff for a while, for a couple of months. And I remember I had walked into work and I was like, I specifically was like, okay, this feels really good. Like sometimes you just know when you're in the zone, when you're, talking to spirit and asking, for guidance or whatever, you can just feel it. And I had walked into work and I was like, all right, Rebecca's like, guide me today on my highest path. I am accepting of, whatever guidance that you have. And so I was sitting at the desk at work and I get a message from Kate on Messenger, on Facebook Messenger, and the notification on my phone was in Portuguese. So it wasn't her actual message. It was the notification that told me that she had like left. I think you were actually reacting to something, but it was written in Portuguese and I didn't know it was in Portuguese. So I had to look it up to see what it was, what language it was. Um, and then nothing else came through in Portuguese. And I didn't change anything back. I mean, I guess I could figure out how to change my phone to have notifications in Portuguese.
But
But I don't know how to do that. I couldn't remember if I told this story in the last podcast or not, the first episode. But yeah, yeah, it was pretty cool. That was a good one.
I loved that one. I loved that one. And that was so much fun. And again, that was like when the breadcrumbs stuff, like the universe was just kind of sending you back in collaboration with the library angels, Okay, how about some written words of exactly what's been in your energetic field and exactly what you've been asking for? Like, let's reflect it back.
Exactly.
Those little blips can be so, so magical.
Even in a language that you don't even know how to speak, which is awesome.
Absolutely. Like, and that catches it's anything that kind of makes you go, whoa, what just happened? I don't, those are very subtle things. How many times do we go through our days and we just go, oh, that's tech just screwing up. Oh, no, that's that. And we excuse it away. Why? Like, there is so much magic just under the surface level, just under, what we can make logical sense and explain away. Like, give it a pause real quick and say, is there anything more for me here? Do I need to pay attention to this? And see what your body feels like. See what comes into your space when you ask those questions. Just take the tiniest beat to ask, hey, is there more going on here? Especially if you're new on a spiritual journey, on that path to getting to know yourself and what's more going on here than just what we see with our eyes and can feel in the physical. I think it's really important to give yourself just a beat when those things happen.
Mm-hmm. The beat
For
when
sure.
anything like that happens, any kind of like synchronicity or sign that you feel like you're getting. I
Yeah.
think that happens with a lot of things is that people don't. They pass them off as, whatever, and don't pay attention to it. And yeah, it's just constantly happening all the time. It's
And,
awesome.
and that's an okay choice to make. It's a very
Yeah.
human choice to make. Like,
Yeah.
and we all get into that space. It doesn't matter how long you've been on the path and how deep you've gone. There's always cycles. There's always times where we're not looking. And it's all okay. It's all gets to be okay. But I will say when, for starting off for saying hello, hello, hi, Library Angels. If you want to get started with that, I think it would be, and this is me, and I might be a little far out for some folks, but I would like get a quiet space and introduce yourself and really let your mind know that you believe that there's a potential for a response here. You don't even have to say, okay, they're going to respond, but that's amazing if you're already open to that. But I do think that there can be something very sacred about just saying, "Hey, I know you're there and I know you're listening every moment." And remember, in energy, with working with the unseen, they hear every thought. They see all of the images that you put in that mind of yours. They are involved with all of it. They see you can hide nothing. There is nothing hidden. It's a great thing it can be a little scary whenever we first
Yeah.
think about that. But in it all gets to be okay because these are incredibly gentle, incredibly knowing. There's nothing that you could do that would scare them away or make them not want to be in your orbit. You are just doing your human thing and they are 100% committed to being there for it. But just to say, hey, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but here's who I am. Here's how I would like to kind of receive some information or around these subjects. Can you please like drop a miracle or two? Could you please let me see how real this is? And just be gentle on your expectations, but knowing that there will be responses. You got to be in that observatory space. But I would introduce myself and I would say, these are some of the things that have spoken to me in the past. I really like music. I really like reading. I really like books on audio versus reading. Like, I like little messages. I like seeing, certain numbers on the microwave or on my clock. I like this stuff. This is easy for me to perceive and it lets you know, hey, I'm acknowledging the ways that I like to receive information that feel good, that feel uplifting, that feel clarifying. It lets them know, hey, this person's talking to us. They're interested in engaging with us, and give them permission to show up and wait and see. Keep your eyes open and wait and see because there will be responses and they will get louder and louder until you pay attention to them if you ask them to. And which, by the way, you can tell them to tone it down. Like you and I have talked when we've been like really blowing and going on certain subject matters that at a certain point it's like, okay, I got what I need right now. And I don't want to be overwhelmed by too much information. Like, can we help? Can we hone this in? And that is a response that you will receive as well.
Yeah.
So that's how I would potentially start. And there is a limitless number of ways that you can work with them. There's a limitless number of ways that they will respond back to you. But I think letting them know that you acknowledge that there might be that presence there, letting them know that you are open to receiving responses and giving yourself just the potentiality. You don't have to say, I believe in this 100%. All of that's there to support you is with you, whether you believe in it or not, whether you curse it or not. Like it doesn't matter. They're still 100% committed. They are the best parent that we could have ever asked for, no matter how much we dislike or don't believe in them. They're going to keep showing up for you.
It's interesting to think about it that way. As the best parent. It's
That
great.
was, yeah, that was a big piece of me getting to know spirit. Like there had to be some ways that you were going to cut, that you were going to tell me no, that I wasn't good enough, or that no, you don't have access to this information because you're just not there yet. There had to be caveats. There had to be conditions. And the truth is there are none.
Mhm. I think a lot of people do this a lot of the times, like how we kind of touched on earlier, just like through music. I feel like I've heard many, many, many stories of people being like, oh, I was thinking of this song, or I wanted to connect with a loved one, and the song just played on the radio. I know that like there's that my sister that happens to her, like with our dad, where she'll hear certain songs and it makes her think of him.
Mhm.
Um, so and maybe it's just because, he just loved music when he was in body, and so that's how he like connects with us. But I also connect that to the Rebeccas, and just I think that it happens to people a lot of times and they just don't realize that it's happening.
100%. And that gets to be okay. But if you want more of it, honor it. Oh my gosh, this just happened. I'm growing my belief. I love that. Like I'll take some more of that. Like I need to grow in my confidence around this. I think when we have those like deliveries, remember whenever like the book started dropping for you and at first it was like, "What?"
Like actually falling, or you mean the
Yes.
you start
Yes. Yeah.
okay,
Like
yeah.
when they and it was like, what? But then it turned into, oh, I'll take that. Like, and
Yeah.
that is now like a very natural thing for you.
Yeah, it is. I remember very specifically the first time that it happened. It was that I read this book. Oh gosh, I'm gonna have to try to think of while we're still on this podcast what the name of the book is. I'll put it in the notes. But it was when I was learning a bunch of stuff about like herbalism and things that I could do to help to heal my body. And it was this book that I would have never read. And it was this girl who ended up becoming an herbalist in the book. And so I got very, like, I enjoyed the story. I related to it. And I got like a lot of actual legit, like, herbal information from it. Um, yeah.
That is such a good point because, when we're not interested in imbibing in real serious and
Hmm.
informative readings, very straightforward information, how about we put it like that? It still gets delivered to us in those cozy reading materials like you just mentioned. Like the wisdom gets embedded. The wisdom could be in watching Dumb and Dumber, a movie that you have maybe potentially seen 100 times before, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, that was just the weirdest response in the dumbest place. And I heard it. Like I heard it. It can come through in so many different ways. So don't hesitate picking up a children's book if it calls to you. Don't hesitate like listening to a song that calls to you, but you don't know why you're interested in. You know what I'm saying? Like don't downplay any of those little urges to say, huh, what's behind this little door here?
Yeah.
Nothing is too childish. Nothing is too, you know, the information will come to you in so many different ways. So don't get hung up on the packaging.
Well, it's hard for me a lot of times to read nonfiction stuff because I feel like that I just there's not enough time in my life to be able to read all of the fictional books that I want to read. And so I get so much of my information. I mean, I guess most of my information from reading fiction. I don't
And,
read.
and well, and you dive into, you have some pretty good like metaphysical and spiritual reads as well. And
Do,
that
but I go through my phases, where I really want to read something. Like when I first started just like my spiritual journey, I was reading a ton of like Ted Andrews, and I can't remember, there was well, what is the one that I always forget the name of?
the
That's
Barbara Ann Brennan,
yes.
yeah,
Um
Hands of Light.
and I was reading a ton of like I just was reading a ton of metaphysical stuff. And
Mhm.
now it's just morphed into me just only reading fiction. Because I went through my whole phase where I was reading a lot of like literary fiction and reading stuff like I was reading a lot of things that were really tough to read. Like I read Beloved, and I was reading The Color Purple, and all these things to try to connect, to that aspect of like my ancestry. So yeah, I mean, it morphs, it changes how I get my information, but it's mostly there right now just because I feel like I have so many things to read, and I'm never going to be able to read all of them.
No, and we need to remember that. Like, you're never going to get your fill of information. It's never going, there are ebbs and flows, but you will never be fully satisfied. And so
That's
don't even
okay.
try. Yeah, don't even
Okay.
try.
Yeah,
Don't
don't
even try.
stress about it.
You made me think of something like, when we talk about the different ways that you work with the library angels, and I know I mentioned muses. But how much when an author really, oh God, there's just such magic, there's such divinity. Um, and I use those interchangeably when I talk about like beautiful responses with energy and all sorts of miracles and things. I don't necessarily mean like working with magical concepts, although you can obviously do that as well. But I think about authors who really channel their material and who really open up to inspiration. You know, you bring up Miss Butler and Miss Hurston and folks who bring incredible wisdom into their fiction.
Mhm.
And so, you know, mentioning like the herbalism stuff, there can be incredible truths and incredible medicine embedded in fiction.
Hmm. I mean, people
Incredible
spend their whole
guidance.
lives like researching things, you know? Like Zora Neale Hurston like spent so much time just like immersing herself into communities, places. I feel like that she was from Florida, if I'm correct, but she would like go back to like her hometown. She went to New Orleans and like immersed herself in like hoodoo there, and she would do all of these things. And she would reflect that in her writing. She would tell stories. She would also use like all of the dialect that people use. And it was just like, it's crazy. People, they just put so much energy into learning these things that, I mean, it's obviously going to be reflected in their work because it's just so much time. And so, you know, it's probably what they're just living the whole time. I mean, I can't imagine writing a whole book and having learned a bunch of stuff about it. You would just be in it. You would be in it.
What is it called when it's method acting?
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly what I mean. It's very parallel.
Mm-hmm. It is very parallel.
So there's no shortage of ways that the information can be provided and responded to in like your request for help and your request for each of our, you know, requests for guidance on like matters that are important to us. I just think it's wonderful.
And also your request for, like, we were talking about my um my Fourth Wing books and how I love them so much and how the I'm gonna have to probably get you to like explain this, but how Rebecca Yarros, since she's still writing the series, how collectively the energy that all of us put into the creation of the story morphs and changes the story, even though she's the one that's writing it. So that kind
Mhm.
of relates back to having an author that is part of the Rebecca's that is still embody, because it's like her story is important to so many people. And so they're all putting that energy into it and shaping what ends up happening, which I feel like is just an awesome thing to think about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so when, if any of our listeners are writers or you are authors, when we do our first work that we potentially share with the world, and it doesn't matter whether it's a blog that you're publishing or whatever you're doing, whatever you're creating, you are tapping into past, present, and future energies. And I mean, this is a very, very broad. But then as we create, and as we share more with others, even if it's just one person, it does not matter. Even when you don't think anyone is looking at or reading it, it matters whatever we create in this world of form. And then as we create our second work or our 50th work or whatever we're doing, we are tapping into our readership of both past, present, and future. This is it's a quantum concept. It's complex, but it's also pretty simple. You are tapping into huge energies. And when we're like actively writing, readership is thinking about what might be happening in our work. It is actively and collaboratively changing the story as we're creating things. And when you talk to certain authors and you hear them say, okay, I started to go in this certain direction and then I scrapped it. That is when you know, or I totally decided to go left. Like I kept it, but I decided to go, I thought it was going to end this way. That is when you know that you are working with this type of energy, when you're really tapping into the fluidity of this. That's why you hear authors say, I had a really hard time letting the story lie with just that. Because there were so many different ways, there's so many different pathways that it could have taken. That's when you know that you're really tapping into the broadness of this. But yes, like you can still be alive, write in your books, and everyone that is a part of your story, including your readership, is impacting however it's going to be formulated and presented to the world before it even hits. How cool is that? And it
Very
also means when you're writing, you need to be clear on what you want flowing into your inspiration. Do you want the people who are naysayers, who don't even like your, I mean, some authors get really stuck with this. It can completely change the way that they approach their work. So
Mhm.
it can be very important when you are a writer, when you're an author, being clear as far as what you want in your space, who you're asking to show up from the unseen, and also what readership do you want to collaborate with.
Mhm.
And there are authors who don't mess with any of this, and there's a lot of tortured writers out there.
Not the tortured artists in
There's a
general.
lot of tortured artists, and it's because we're not always or often not so clear about like what we want to be collaborating with, which is beautiful. It's part of the human experience, whatever. So I love that.
Do you have anybody, total like subject change, but do you have anybody that you feel like that you would just automatically just buy their book without having like are there any authors that you just love so much that you will just buy anything that they write?
No, I had to like, no,
I was expecting this
no.
a bunch of people.
Because in that moment, like, okay, so like if Ted Andrews was still alive or something, or if like somebody said, hey, there were these unfinished work of Ted Andrews, and we're going to publish them. The first thing I would do is this information for me? And then I would wait for that yes or no. I just don't think that I have like I don't even have that with my husband's my favorite person in the world. And he doesn't have like carte blanche to just bring, you know what I'm saying? Like I
Yeah,
still feel my way. So, yeah, like I don't know. I would have to like see because there are some authors that I don't like all of their works.
you're better than I am. Just I have like two, at least two or three people that I would just automatically buy their stuff. Like if
Well,
Octavia Butler were still alive, I would buy anything that she writes. I went to when I went on my book, I recently went on this Richmond independent bookstore crawl, and it was just so wonderful. And one of the bookstores that I went to is called Resist Books, and it was in Petersburg, Virginia. And there was an Octavia Butler book that I've never seen. Never seen it. And so I bought it, and really it's just actually, I'm looking at it right now. It's really just like a bunch of her quotes, like things that she like said, and I guess kind of just like little essays and
mhm.
conversations that she had. It's not even necessarily like an actual book, but it's her words. It's not like about her. Um, so yeah. If she was still alive, I would buy anything that she anything that
And
she
I'm not arguing with you, but when you're talking about this, because I mean, it is very important for me to honor your perspective or anyone's perspective. So I
Yes.
feel that, but and also I feel you. Oh, like I think that those folks, those three or four folks, you have such an open line of creative collaboration with them.
Okay.
You're not even thinking about that. Hey, is this something that I want to read? Because it feels so open and connected.
Yes, I would
Because
agree.
yeah, so even that book there, like it didn't feel like an obstruction like when you got to it or anything. It was like a very much like another line of connection with Miss Butler.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
It just feels open. So I do think that we can have that level of connectivity. And I
Mhm.
do, but I would encourage everyone to be like, does it feel good to move forward on this? Or does it give me pause? Or, you know what I'm saying? Anytime that I just feel like we like jump on something that because it's probably because it feels good to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I would buy anything that everything that Zora wrote.
There you go.
Yeah. It's just Octavia Butler, basically. So Octavia Butler and the woman that wrote One Dark Window, her name is Rachel Gillig. Anything that she writes, I will buy it. because her writing is just beautiful.
You
Right.
know, that's a really good point. You know, we don't think about often when we read anyone's work, whether we're just reading like a quote, it is an energetic collaboration. It's meeting with that person. We might not think about it that way. Um, and I think it's quite powerful. And I do think that we have those folks. Like I would think if I see a message come through from you, like I know I'm going to open it. I know I'm going to read it.
Yeah.
There are other people where I don't. I just delete it.
Right.
You know?
I mean, that's good, I guess. You know what you want, what kind of energy you want to.
But oftentimes it's just very clear. So I do think that we can have those guides, those author guides that we just know that we're going to be working with in this life. And it feels open. And that doesn't mean that you're not collaborating um with Zora. It's
Hmm.
just that you're very clear, I'm going to say even like kinesthetically, like in your body and in your mind space of where you're going to collaborate with her on. I just
Yeah.
find it fascinating, like especially when could be like the way that you just like formulated it. There are some folks that I am going to lean into and know that like those messages are waiting for me, even in books that aren't written yet, versus there are some that their medicine is only embedded in certain pieces, you know, what feels like right medicine and right books and all of that to each person is specific and it's unique.
Well, it's the story too. If it's that piece, that story that you're connected to, like my favorite books, the Empyrean series, The Fourth Wing. I don't read any other Rebecca Yarros books. She's got
Mhm.
like a bajillion of them, but I'm not gonna probably read them. It's not like my style of, just my story that I would want to read.
Mhm.
So sorry. So yeah, I mean, it's the story that I connect to on that and
Mhm.
not.
Brilliant. It's just brilliant. I love it. Well, so let's transition a bit
Okay.
into I think we need to let this conversation sit and let folks kind of marinate in it and think about it. But we've talked a lot about like breadcrumbs and like and a lot of folks name these types of responses as signs and synchronicities, which I know that we talked a little bit about like on our initial episode. And I think that we need to talk more about it because I think people get really turned around on this.
Mhm.
Um, and so, with signs and synchronicities collaborating with library angels and with the Rebeccas, can we touch a little bit about this? Like, how do we know when we have signs and synchronicities happening with literature?
I would consider the Portuguese like message a synchronicity
Is
because
it
that
that thread of similarity? Like I try to think of if I'm all like I'm in my 40s now. Like health is really important to me. Learning about my body is really important to me. So like if I'm dealing with like a knee issue and like the information that will reverberate back to me might be people with useful information around knees or joints or supplements that have helped with like pain management or pain prevention. Is it typically around like those threads of similarity and parallels on the subject?
yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now I'm really trying to think of how you would really like differentiate. I mean, when I think about signs, I get most of my well, I when I think about signs, I don't necessarily think about the Rebeccas, even though that is all incorporated into that as well. But I think about what I get through nature.
Very nice.
When I think about signs, that's what I think about.
That's a very good differentiation. So are signs potentially, hey, responses as to pay attention, and then the synchronicities are typically on the subject matter that you're seeking. So they might not even be helpful synchronicities, but they are letting you know that the universe, that energy, that whatever is in the beyond is responding back with some of that subject matter that you're
Yes.
mentioning.
A
Very
lot
good differentiation.
Yeah, because a lot of times I feel like that with a synchronicity, what it's usually telling me is that I'm on the right path, whatever that path is that I am on. Like whatever the journey is that I'm thinking about, I'm on the right path, like with it. When I think about synchronicities, I don't necessarily think that they themselves mean something. I think that just the act or the fact that I am having a synchronicity to me is what makes me feel like that I'm like, okay, I'm, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think this is going to be a very good conversation because I think it's useful. It's so easy to get confused and or to think that it's all confirmation that we're going in the right direction, and that is not the case.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I might need some advice on that.
Oh,
That's what
well, so do I. I mean, we're all in our human like experience and we get a little lost along the way.
and I feel like I have so many books that relate to signs and synchronicity too, which is awesome. Like actual books about it. It's perfect.
I love it. All right. Well, I think that that's going to bring today's conversation to a close.
Hmm.
I think we covered a lot of interesting materia.
I agree, ma'am.
All right. Well, listeners, we thank you so much for being here with us. Shoot us an email. You can find our email address in the show notes. All of our books that we mentioned also going to be in the show notes in case you're interested in looking at that. And we will catch you on our next episode.
Bye.
Bye.